topic. Thank you all, everyone, for being here. Much appreciated, right? This is a spirited conversation. I really do appreciate everyone's different opinions on this. Very much so. Excuse me. If you...
Wait, can I give a closing statement?
We don't do closing statements. We just...
I know, but I kind of want to.
You say your opening statement in the next one. We just gotta keep things moving. Okay. Hello all. So if you are watching this later on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. Right? Helps out the channel a lot. Support us by hitting the follow button here on Twitch, right? Support us by hitting that follow button and make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. We do this all the time. So if you're new to the channel, if you just stop by, you liked what we're doing here, we'll do a lot more of it. Hit us up on social media, Discord, where we have all our conversations, including this one, TikTok, where we'll find funny videos about the channel, Twitter, where we let you know what's going on, and YouTube is where you find the bot. So again, like, comment, subscribe. Please support this community by hitting us up on all our social media. All right, so I'm going to introduce our next topic, which I'm super interested in. All right, topic 2, Amazon's oh fuck, wrong one. Wrong one. I screwed up too far. All right, excuse me. All right. The World Health Organization has declared monkeypox to be an international public health emergency. As of now, the transmission seems to be almost exclusively between men who have sex with men. However, at the same time in the US, we have a conservative movement that has criticized and terrorized teachers as being child sexual groomers, either talking about LGBT issues or discussing sex education. Are conservatives' fears about grooming making the public less prepared to deal with a future where more of these types of epidemics will keep emerging? Or are conservatives proven correct that abstinence-only education is the best path forward? So it's a bit of a disjointed question, I'm going to admit that. But I wanted to talk about how all these things might interconnect. So yeah, we have the monkeypox thing, which is becoming more and more serious throughout the nation. But it is tied to a practice that is oftentimes very much moralized, which is, so far gay sex, right? But not exclusively gay men, to be very clear. And at the same time, we're having what I would describe as a moral panic about the LGBT community, and we're having legislation passed around those individuals. Like, are conservatives who are pushing this agenda, are they making us less able to respond to such a pandemic, especially in the long term, right? Not just for like this specific disease, but in the long term. Or maybe they have a point. So we'll go down the line. Please, Scott.
Yeah. Interesting for me because I had to try and imagine what fantasy world people were living before they could even construct this question, because it's so false in all of its presumptions. So the first thing I want to say is that while monkeypox is mostly spread as of right now amongst homosexual men having sex, that's not the only way it's spread. And that there are 2 children from these individuals who have been infected. And I don't want that to be that people to think it's only an STD, because that would be accusing these people of pedophilia. So let's just get that out of the way.
Sure.
First and foremost, the grooming situation is completely unconnected to this in almost every aspect. And I tried to figure out how a lefty would like draw these straws. And then I realized that they don't understand what it is that conservatives believe in any shape, form, or capacity. So let me enlighten you just a little bit with some polling data. Well over 90% of all conservatives, all people that vote Republican, do not want abstinence only taught in schools. So when you talk about the right, what you're talking about is an extremely small group of conservatives that you've imagined the right wing to be, when well over, I think for middle school, it's 95% of conservatives support abstinence within a larger group of things taught. So long as you're protection, birth control, sex education, etc. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to take a fringe idea and then you're trying to take a cultural phenomena and tie them together, even though they're not connected in any way. And it's kind of really disingenuous and disgusting. And so the answer simply is that these things aren't connected at all. And if you want to have a debate about groomers, I'll happily have that debate, but that has nothing to do with monkeypox or any of this situation or sex education for that matter. There's almost no significant difference between Democrats and Republicans in their support for sex education. Comprehensive. It only occurs in elementary schools. And I don't think elementary school kids are the ones going to like these large gangbangs where they're getting monkeypox, right? Like, it's not happening.
Thanks so much. All right, let's go to Fanatic.
Whew, Fabian's coming with the hot takes today. Yeah, so I would say that like monkeypox, like spreading amongst homosexual men, sounds like something similar to the HIV thing, where it's significantly more likely, right? Like I think that they'd said that like vaginal intercourse is like 1 in 5,000 is the like likelihood of you contracting HIV from a heterosexual vaginal intercourse encounter. Whereas it's like 1 in 50 or something, I think, for like a homosexual encounter, or maybe it was 1 in 1. I don't know, it was something significantly higher. And so I would say it sounds believable. I don't know yet. I mean, I guess we'll probably have to figure it out to find out if that's the case, if it spreads very similarly in nature. I also don't really see how the monkeypox thing really kind of flies off of the sex education thing, because like almost no one does do abstinence only sex education, and it still hasn't prevented like the passing of STDs. Like I think more, yeah, the STDs are really common even amongst young people. So I don't think that that's really the issue here. I mean, I guess that's just my take.
Thanks so much. Wow.
Yeah, so I was looking at the article, and I think that there is, like Fanatic said, that there's like a very prevalent danger of this monkeypox turning out like the early AIDS crisis, where people believe that because initially people thought it was just the gay disease, from men having sex with men, that was the only vector, and then gay people were stigmatized and made fun of, and it led to so many deaths of despair and disease in the LGBT community. And so I think that we run the risk with these like early reportings, when like even the article that was provided, people are saying that we need more time, more studies, because we're not even sure what's really causing it. These are just like what we're just looking at the time. So I think we need to like slow down, actually reassess, and make sure things actually are the way they seem before we make any like broad statements. But on the cultural side, I think that I think maybe with the LGBT community, I think that, and this talk about groomers, I think that these people are they're victims, because no one deserves to be diseased, no one deserves to catch a virus. But I think that they should have been a bit more responsible with their behavior, because they got this disease because they're victims in this, because we live in a culture that's very sex positive. And people are saying that the free love movement from the 60s that continued down, just like with the AIDS crisis as well, that contributed to it, because we really learned that sharing needles and drug use also contributed to the spread of AIDS. And the things we didn't know that until much later, and that's one of the reasons why the LGBT community was such a scapegoat. So I think that we need to keep that in mind. And maybe we'll find that there's some other extra vector that explains why so far we see it's only men having sex with men, but it might be something else later down the line. So I think we should have an open mind. And as for the actual people getting diseased, I think that they shouldn't be blamed, they shouldn't be stigmatized, but they should be very careful, because I've seen like in the article, people are saying that these people are having like 15 people like having sex with 15 different partners in the span of 3 months. That's obviously not responsible behavior. That's obviously borderline degenerate. Probably not, but probably borderline degenerate. And they should be careful.
Borderline?
Right? Yo,
okay.
Olive Owl's out here getting it, all right? Oh, well, you know, it's a little bit, that's a little bit lower than my body count. It's borderline degenerate.
Okay. All right. Well, see, there's that moralizing I was talking about. And to be clear, that was only very few. Just to be clear, that wasn't like a whole bunch of people who were doing that. But you know, but we'll get into it. Bam, please.
Yeah, I think I'm not gonna repeat what other people have said related to the monkeypox. It seems to be that's where the data is right now. I think that, you know, if it changes, then so shall my opinion. I'm definitely not qualified to make calls on that. As far as the second part related to sex education, I'm you may be able to find polls that say something, but it, like, as far as it seems like what currently happening in America, I think I saw a poll saying like 58% of the country still teaches abstinence only, and then like 25% of the country has like no sex ed at all in their school program. So like that's not necessarily an issue of voters. And again, this was polling from like 2020, so that could be that
Could you repeat that?
It was saying that like 58% of the country has abstinence only education, and I think 25% didn't have any type of sex ed at all. But again, we can find 2022 stats that may or a different poll that may show something different.
Just to be clear though, but like Bam, for those things, when they say that they have abstinence only education, that's where like a place has like a very comprehensive education.
Let's wait. We gotta get through this.
Okay.
Yeah. So like even so, though people may say something, it seems like that what's actually happening in schools, at least again from what I've seen, seems to be something different. And people don't have a huge problem with it overall. And then that becomes it becomes even less, at least dealing with the grooming element of it. That becomes an even bigger problem when you have at any type of LGBT inclusion or into that comprehensive sex education, because it seems like we have an issue with things being not quite so comprehensive. But yeah, I think a lot of these things are going to have to be talked through and dealt with the specifics. So that's all I got right now.
Thanks so much. Okay, please, Spartacus.
Yeah, so again, I'm not really gonna touch the first half of that. That's basically monkeypox is spreading. However it spreads, you can find information about that regarding the CDC. The information doesn't seem to be wrong regarding my research. But that I don't think that's where the real question. I don't think that's where the real question lies. And so when we look at abstinence only, we see that 5 states do have abstinence only education. It's Mississippi, Texas, Arizona, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Those 5 states do have abstinence only education. And then on top of that, you have 18 states that require educators to also you only have 18 states require educators to also share information about birth control. So only 18 states require educators to share information about birth control to females. I think that's enormously low. At the same time, I don't think that I don't think that the idea that conservatives fears about grooming, et cetera, and so on, it's somewhere in the middle between the two questions. I don't agree with abstinence-only education. I don't think it works. I think kids are going to be kids. They're going to make dumb decisions. And if they're going to make dumb decisions, we should at least tell them how to be safe about it. But no, I think abstinence-only education does not work. And so I don't think that abstinence-only education should be pushed whatsoever.
So much. Please, Zonia.
Yeah. By the way, Sprout, it's not just kids that make dumb decisions about sex. Adults do it all the time.
Oh, adults, yeah. No, I was just made to talk about kids. 'Cause that's when sex education is. You don't get sex education as a 25-year-old. So
yeah. Well, they should. Yeah. So and kind of and kind of wrapping up the previous thing, I think the one outcome from the previous topic that I came to is that we should all get together and start a prosperity gospel church. All right, so let's talk about it in the group chat. Anyways, my take on this is, I think the conservatives don't go far enough. I think it should be abstinence only, not just education, but abstinence only. Look, I think I've done quite well here being an asexual person. I don't have to worry about any of this kind of crap. And I think you guys should learn from me. I don't think people should be doing any of that degeneracy at all. I think everybody should be asexual and just staying away from it entirely. Also, let's keep in mind that I don't think we should kind of like pin conservatives for this one when it comes to like, when it comes to like their views on LGBT and such, and how that has to do with the spread of this disease. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially considering how often is it that like conservative men suddenly get caught for having like been indulging in gay porn and stuff like that and gay sex all the time. So keep that in mind as well. So anyways, that's my intro. Go ahead.
Thanks so much for
Next.
that.
I'm going to fuck this topic up big time. You guys are going to have fun with it.
Okay. Thank you so
Ted
much.
Haggard.
Let's go. Ted. Oh, beautiful. Ted Haggard.
So beautiful.
The hero, King of Kings. Please, our friend Doobie, love to hear from you.
Boy, that hero, King of Kings, that wasn't for me.
No, it should. He was one of many, but you're the best of the King of Kings.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think that I think it's a little weird to bring up like sex education in relation to this topic, given that I don't think that we would want like kindergartners or first graders to be engaging in anal sex, right? Which is like how this stuff has been spreading, since you get like micro tears in the anus when they have anal sex, and that's how it spreads, right? So I think it's a little bit sus. I don't think it's really related to that topic, and I think that LGBTQ plus advocates who do relate it to that topic, right? The topic of like grooming children, are kind of like self-reporting, to be honest with you. They want to teach kids like how to have like safe anal sex. Kindergartners, first graders, like that's they're not helping the optics.
Okay.
Who
So
brought up an age
I'm
group?
I'm gonna respond to something very quickly, right? So our friend Fabian Liberty Scott, right? Like, okay, just to be clear, right? The question never implied, this question that I created, never implied that it was an STI. In fact, I sent you guys that article, which specifically says that this is not an STI, just as far as we know. Right?
I didn't accuse you of that.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to be very clear when having this
great.
conversation.
So sure. And so like this is an STI. As far as we know, it's from close intimate contact, right? Which is why those two children, as Scott mentioned previously, were somehow able to get it, right? No one thinks they were.
It's a bloodborne pathogen.
But yeah, it's but it can spread some other means, and we don't fully understand how, right? The reason I'm relating it back to this, right, to sex education, is because a vector that we do know that it spreads is through anal sex, right? Unprotected anal and oral sex, right? So you can have the monkeypox in your oral cavity, your anal cavity, and on your genitals. That's the thing that happens, and it's really unfortunate.
Sounds uncomfortable.
We know that the people that Isle was mentioning from the article, right, were not using protection. So this all ties into a sex education system that is poor, that is not accomplishing what it needs to do, right? And those individuals, like 14% of them, of the people who had the monkeypox, also have HIV, right? So you can understand the type of crowd this is spreading among, right? And to be clear, when it comes to abstinence-only education, right, I have the data on that as well, right? 37 states require sex education includes abstinence. Of these states, 26 of them require that abstinence be stressed more than any other form of sex education. Now, guess which states are the ones that focus that do these things, right? They say yes, exactly. So I'm not saying that every single conservative believes that. Certainly not. That'd be a dumb fuck statement. I wouldn't say a dumb fuck statement, right? But this is a thing that's been spread among conservative circles, conservative policymakers, right? And we have the actual policy as evidence of that. Thank you.
So that's
So I've got a bone to pick. So I've got a bone to pick really quick. So first off, Doobie. One second.
Spartacus.
one at a time. I mean, he was
Thank
talking
you.
for you guys.
Thank you.
I want to hear the dog talk.
Spartacus,
He's
then
gonna
Fanatic,
really get a
then
conversation.
Scott.
So I've got a bone to pick a little bit. So Doobie, the fact that you're saying that it's spread through tears in the anus, this according to the CDC, it can spread from direct contact with the infectious rash, scabs, or bodily fluids. It can spread from Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. We can rewind the VOD. He did say that.
He did not say it only spreads through tears of the anus. He didn't say
spreads
that.
through tears in the anus. He said it spreads through tears of the anus. Right, that's the only way he said it spreads. That's the only way he said it spreads. Did he say?
He did not say that's the only way it spreads. Please restate it, Doobie.
Oh, he said that's the way he spreads.
Oh my God, Doobie, please.
Okay. So I did not say that the only way monkeypox spreads is through like micro tears of the anus. I said that primarily the reason it's more common in the gay community is because they tend to have anal sex with zero protection, and that sometimes causes micro tears in the anus, which leads to people getting fucking monkeypox.
Now, Doobie,
I'm not saying that is the only way this happens.
Doobie, I'm going to ask you a question. Doobie, I'm going to ask you a question. I understand that. You already answered the question.
Like the other infectious diseases that specifically like disproportionately affect gay people, this is why. Right, like it's
Doobie,
not that
I'm going to ask you a question. Was that the only cause that you mentioned? Because I said that's the only way of spread that you said, correct? Is that the only one you mentioned?
That is the only one I mentioned. I didn't say that's the only way possibly.
So the CDC.
So he didn't say it's the only way. So he didn't say it's the only way. He didn't say it's the only way. So you're right. He did not say it's the only way. So you're going on this stupid diatribe to try to tell Doobie, hey, this isn't the only way, when that was not what he said. Everyone else heard that. That's not the argument. That's not what he presented. He already clarified it, so now we can move on to a better conversation because no one's making that argument. Now we're going to the next point, right? Thank you.
Speaking real hard and fucking bad.
Sprout, do you have another point beyond that? Since we have established.
That's it. He was going to go explain what the CDC says now about how else it spreads. When Doobie never made that statement.
Can I would like to point out that it's also spread apparently by piss parties.
I would like to also point out.
Thank you. We can move on to something more intelligent. Thank you.
It is mostly spread by people talking over each other. Just to fair warning.
Can I say something?
Doobie, have a quick response, and we're going to go to Fanatic and Scott.
Well, Prime. I think it's interesting that you point to the states where like they have like abstinence-only education or abstinence-centered education, because the states with the highest cases of monkeypox are not those states. They're like New York, fucking California, Washington D.C., Illinois. These aren't like These aren't not just where people are, but in places specifically that are very where like lefty, where they have this kind of like progressive politics that Prime love so much, where they're not doing the abstinence education that you attempting to like shift the blame onto for that. So
the top 10 states with it aren't the top 10.
Are they doing abstinence only education in New York where they have the most cases of monkeypox?
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
they're really doing abstinence only
again, but you're trying to prove that that's like some correlative thing. That's what I'm saying. You're literally it also correlates
I'm saying
with
that
where
Prime
the people
implying
are.
that there's some kind of correlation between like abstinence-centered education and monkeypox, or the spreading of any kind of STDs is like so.
People who live there are people who were part of the New York education system. Do you think that New York, maybe if any place is a melting pot, literally New York would be the melting pot, and one of the major transit centers, right? Like in terms of international travel, right?
I do agree. We need to build a wall.
Okay.
All
right.
But this is brain rot. Please. Yeah, this is brain rot. Like I don't know why we would sit here wasting our time like with this incredibly spurious connection. There is no correlation between people who are in abstinence. I love that abstinence-centered education as opposed to like a more comprehensive, right? One, I don't understand why that would be, like how that's related to this at all. It actually just doesn't seem like it would be. And then secondly, I would say that like, so abstinence-only education isn't really like it. What we call abstinence-only education is incredibly misleading. So you have these places that have this really comprehensive, like except for like the state of Texas, which even Texas now has more than that. But like where there's a comprehensive like sex education, but abstinence is stressed. Abstinence is stressed as the only way to 100% prevent all of these STDs and STIs, and that's factually accurate. Abstinence is the only way you can be 100% guaranteed not to contract any STDs. Now, that you can say that also condoms are really great preventative things, getting regularly tested, making sure that your partners are tested, limiting the number of sexual encounters you have with people and the number of sexual partners, and making sure that your partners do the same, saving sex for marriage. All of these are various ways to prevent STDs and prevent STIs, but the idea is, when you're talking to young children, is also to say, because of the fact that I know that the likelihood that you're going to be as disciplined as you're supposed to, you can't even get you to remember to feed the dog at night. The idea that we're going to try to get you to remember to make sure that you're wearing a condom, and making sure that you're like enforcing other people to wear a condom, or in something as uncomfortable as sexual encounters, I think that it would make all of the sense in the world why you would say abstinence only is the preferred version of abstaining, of avoiding all of these STDs. But those things would be labeled as abstinence only education, just because they're saying
abstinence plus. Specifically in Texas. I was just talking in Texas, like they differentiate between abstinence plus, which is what you were discussing.
Okay, but Texas is something different. Like, nigga, they got their own power grid. But like around the country and all of those different states that you're talking about, like where abstinence only is stressed, it's still not an abstinence only education unless we're just saying any education that includes the fact that abstinence only is the only way, is the only way of totally preventing any STIs or STDs. And if that's the case, then sure. I mean, but that's just factually accurate. And I think that we're always, whenever we're talking about abstinence only, it seems like people are talking about that the education only teaches about abstinence and doesn't teach about anything else. And that's just not true. In like the vast majority of cases, Texas is an exception.
Let's go to Scott and then Sproutacus.
And I also want to
I want to
say something cool.
Yes, I want to stress two things, because there's actually two forms of education that's appropriate here. There's nothing to do with grooming. There's nothing to do with abstinence only education. It has nothing to do with all of these weird connections that are trying to be made. These are the two things that you need to understand. That if you are an individual that wants to be sexually active, you need to engage in protection, and you shouldn't be having orgies, and you shouldn't be engaged in sexual activity over and over and over again without making sure that your partners are tested, and making sure that you're not having sex with people that are having a bunch of other sexual partners and not getting tested regularly. So that's number one. Number two, what we know so far is that one of the primary reasons why we are seeing a surge in monkeypox is because we are no longer vaccinated against smallpox. The younger population is not vaccinated against smallpox. And to the best of our knowledge, smallpox seems to be a relatively good vaccination to prevent the likelihood of catching monkeypox. So if you're someone that's skeptical of vaccines, smallpox vaccines have been used since literally George Washington in America. He inoculated his troops with smallpox. It is a live attenuated virus with a bifurcated needle. It's not a big deal. It is not something that is like a new vaccine with crazy things in it. Go get a fucking smallpox vaccination if you can. Go to your doctor. It's not that big of a deal. You take care of the wound on your arm, it disappears, it leaves a tiny little scar. You don't ever have to worry about smallpox again, and you're much, much less likely to catch monkeypox. So if you actually care about reducing this, practice safe sex. Don't go to fucking orgies. Don't have sex with random people on fucking Tinder that are having sex with a bunch of other people. And if you can, get a fucking smallpox vaccination. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it seems like the issue here isn't the lack of education, right? It seems like the issue is degenerate hedonistic behavior, where people just fucking each other at like wanton in fucking like piles of dick and ass. Like, that's the fucking problem.
Piles of dick and ass. Another good band name. Let's go to Sproutacus, and then
So I'm gonna finish reading what I was trying to read so eloquently earlier. The CDC has concluded that the monkeypox can be spread from direct contact with the infectious rash, scabs, or body fluids, respiratory secretions during prolonged face-to-face contact or during intimate physical contact, such as kissing, cuddling, or sex, touching items such as clothing or linens that previously touched the infectious rash or body fluids, and pregnant people can spread the virus to their fetus through the placenta. This is not an only gay thing. This can and has as shown will spread to people who are not gay and don't participate in gay sex. And so the idea that we're just talking about for monkeypox, we're just talking about don't go to orgies, don't have sex with the people on Tinder that have sex with a bunch of other partners is absolutely ridiculous when this can be spread through a linen not being washed when they laid in it the night previous. This is absolutely ridiculous to go on this like large tirade of who people should have sex with when that's a way to spread it, yes, but that's the only way we're talking about, and there's other ways you can catch the monkeypox that's not that, and we're not addressing that, and we're just leaving that out of the conversation.
Dude, you can
Wait, so like we're dealing with the primary.
You have a quick reply, then I'll Zonia. Who else? And then Fanatic. Do you want to go? I'm not sure.
Well, I'm just a little bit concerned. So why do you think it is that
wait 1 second. Can we all just like pause for 5 seconds? I'm sorry, Doobie, please, for the love of God, please.
Go
5 seconds.
Sir. I love you. Okay.
I just want to make sure that we all pause and congratulate Sprouticus because he can read. And he wanted to read that to us. It had nothing to do with the conversation because no one made those arguments. But it's good because he read it and he wanted to educate us in this manner.
Just make that argument. Didn't Fanatic just wait, no, we can play this. I can play this game if you want to play this game because no one's gonna get muted here. Keep playing this game because no one's gonna get muted. Because you did this to me. So if you want to continue to interrupt people, we can just keep talking. I like this game. This game's great, Fanatic. I love this.
Thank you. Please mute him because I was talking.
You did it to me.
Everyone shut the fuck up when I tell you to shut the fuck up. I don't care who you are. Just stop talking. Thank you. Fuck. All right. Good. You got your dig in. Sprouticus, you said your thing. Keep make a quick response. I was still talking. I don't care. Shut up. Thanks.
You're right. I got it. You're right. 100%. Maliciously comply here.
Okay. I just want to know why Sprouticus thinks it is that homosexuals are getting this at much higher rates than everybody else.
Homosexuals are getting at much higher rates because there's a much higher risk factor. But the fact that it's
What's the risk factor?
The risk factor is sex.
Where does it come
and
from?
Unprotected sex.
Specifically, why is their unprotected sex more likely to lead to them having monkeypox?
It's because it's anal sex, but it's not. Straight couples have anal sex as well. Sex? Oh my gosh. I didn't say that what you said was incorrect. I stated that there was other issues, which I was trying to bring up. I don't know why this point's being drawn out. Yes, it can cause anal sex can cause this. Never said it couldn't, but there's other causes that we're just leaving out of the conversation and just pretending like this is the only cause we're worried about because that's been the only topic of conversation. We're not talking about how it can be spread through bed sheets or by clothes.
What's the interesting conversation you want to have there? Hey guys, wash your bed sheets more often. Then what? Like, where do we go?
No, then maybe we should talk about sex education then, and not necessarily monkeypox. If you think monkeypox is so boring, then we can move to sex education.
It seems like the issue is in sex education. I think people know that sometimes when you're fucking somebody in the ass, there could be like some pain, there could be some tearing if you're not doing it correctly. Right? I don't think the issue is education here.
There can be tearing vaginally if you don't do it correctly.
Nobody said that. Right? Nobody claimed that wasn't true. But it's much more likely to happen if you're having anal sex.
Dude, 96% of the people are gay. So obviously that's the majority of the conversation here.
Yeah, you're asking.
But it's not the only way it can spread, and it can spread through many other reasons.
We got it. I'll then Zonia, then Bam, and then Fanatic. I'll please.
I was just curious because we're talking about spurious correlations and things of that nature with abstinence only education. But even the article that was linked, like lots of health professionals and experts had a correlation more directly with pride parades and pride celebrations in June, because lots of men were having sex with men. And getting together and having, like Doobie said, like a whole lot of hedonistic piles of dick and ass parties and whatnot. And I think that is the more cogent correlation, because that's why you see lots of it happening in New York and California, because they have really large, really culturally instituted pride parades in these areas. And I think that's just what's going on. Now, I don't think that like I said before, I don't think they should be blamed for that because, you know, if they want to celebrate Pride and by having a celebratory, I'm gay, so I'm going to have an orgy like type affair, that's totally fine. I mean, we live in a very sex positive culture, you know, free love, you know, sex work is real work, you know, like prostitutes doing the real work of God and things of that nature. And, you know, slut walks down up and down the street. So, I mean, you know, there's as much victims as anyone else in this culture. I mean, you know, if anyone ever says that we should have a sex negative point of view, they're rightfully, and I'll say this right, they're rightfully shown as puritanical and authoritarian, and they want to like get into your bedroom. So, but you know, this is the trade-off of that is that, you know, we have lots of people being hedonistic and just, you know, just doing the wrong things because they live in a culture where it's just okay to say, you know what, gay pride, let's have an orgy. And then some people just have monkeypox. That's just how it works. And it's not, and you know, it's not their fault, but they should have been more responsible because even within the article, it was saying that gay men were reporting that with like Prep C and all these other pills that help you take out the viral load of HIV, they were using condoms less because, you know, there was less risk of spreading HIV now. So I think that's just irresponsible, degenerate behavior, and I think that people should be aware that no, you need to put that condom back on. There's a new kid on the block that's gonna fuck you up if you have an orgy and you don't
breach.
in there. Okay, you need to put that condom back on. I think that's what we just have to have an outreach to the gay community and let them know that, you know, like you thought HIV was bad, monkeypox is here now, and it's pretty much just as bad, if not worse. Maybe, I don't know, possibly. Maybe.
So now I'm interested in coming out to the world as gay because apparently it comes with a free orgy. Thank you so much. All right, let's go to Zonia and then Bam and then Fanatic.
Well, that's an interesting one to follow. First, I'd like to take a moment to congratulate both Fanatic and Sprouticus on their marriage. Congratulations on your nuptials. I hope that this is a long-lasting marriage. You two, it feels like you guys have already been married for years, honestly, with the kind of bickering that you two have. But I do want to have that moment of congratulations. Chat, if you could just, throw some emotes in there, maybe throw some bits even, to kind of celebrate, kind of like you would confetti on the marriage of Fanatic and Sprouticus. Also, be careful, monkeypox, right? So I think one thing that we can all kind of agree on is that in general, a lot of transmissible diseases and infections are much more likely to transmit when you are in close proximity with people, especially sexually involved with them, sleeping with them, in the same house, having sex with them. All these things are going to increase the odds. And then any additional risk of exposure there from, like, as Doobie kind of put it, from rip and tear, but is going to increase the risk of transmission of various types of transmissible diseases, especially bloodborne ones. So no matter what, you're going to get more exposure to this. I think obsessing over it being, gay men transmitting it is a little bit ridiculous. I think what we can focus on more is, like, what are the many ways in which we should be reducing that exposure. So I think gay men by and large tend to probably have a pretty good idea of sex education, though maybe don't follow the rules. So that's something to keep in mind. Sex education is kind of suffering in many states, and it isn't as comprehensive as it should be. But I think overall we should be talking about, hey, the broader picture. How do we reduce the exposure of this thing and limit its spread, slow it down, and that includes sort of amending sex education right now, not just a system, but right now kind of getting the message out there, hey, use protection, kind of get protection, make protection more available to everybody, not just gay men, right? Not just for gay sex, but for everyone. Reduce the number of orgies, celebratory orgies. I get it. It's a big American thing. They do those in the White House with the current president, from what I've heard from various Republicans, and just reduce the number of orgies, maybe have fewer people involved, reduce it down to like 3 people instead. But yeah, just everybody should be taking precaution. There's no reason to demonize one subgroup of people for this kind of thing. But also again, congratulations to Fnatic and Sproutacus.
3 people is not much of an orgy. I think you know that. All right, we can do better than that.
Well, I don't have sex, so I
think you know that much. All right, Sonia.
I'm not degenerate, okay? I'm not a degenerate like you guys are.
That's true. I'm the degenerate here. Let's go to our That's absolutely true.
Now, I don't know. I feel like people are making like a weird moralization with the idea of like, oh, why are we calling out a specific population group? At least, I think at least in regards to how they're dealing with the vaccine that they have related to it. I mean, I would assume this early on, especially with, I'm sure facilities who create vaccines aren't going to stop pumping out COVID. That seems to be like the top priority right now. So with this being like a smaller issue, a secondary issue, I'm sure vaccines are limited. So I've seen something saying like one of the requirements were like they were trying to prioritize the LGBT population because it was specifically gay men, because it seems to be who it's having the biggest impact on. So it's just being specific with our targeting and being efficient. I don't think it's necessarily the same thing as stigmatizing.
Bam, I'm sorry. You had another point, it seems. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah, no, so I don't consider it necessarily stigmatizing. As far as it seems like I thought we were dealing more with the sex ed end of things, but it seems like we're kind of shifted away from that. I just generally believe that I probably do lie somewhere on, I don't even know about abstinent plus, like the idea of like, oh, you can do all these things, but throwing some moral must to be abstinence. I think saying that like abstinence is probably abstinence is pretty cool. Wait until you find someone that you truly want to have sex with is a good thing, but like I don't think that it would, if these abstinence plus programs are making it making, I guess, throwing like a moral throwing their morality around on the idea of like having sex before marriage, I don't think that would be super good or useful. But I think abstinence should obviously be an option.
So I have a little bit of a bone to pick with that first statement Black America made. While I agree with your sentiment that like we're just trying to represent reality here in dealing with a new virus, the idea
I'm just trying to be useful, not represent. Like be trying to like we're dealing with limited resources,
right? But hear me out on this. The idea that we can at the very least empathize with the LGBT community. That not that long ago, the state played a lot of fucking games with HIV and AIDS. I mean, people were poisoned to death with AZT. The government shut down, and the FDA made sure that these people couldn't get life-saving medication because, you know what? It's only happening to blacks and gays. And so the idea that they didn't stop, that they stopped people from being able to get fucking vitamins, that the medical community was experimenting on these people. And now you have another virus that comes about just after COVID, just after government overreaches, and, by the same Dr. Fauci that fucking murdered so many of these people that happened to somehow magically remain in power. Now we have another fear-mongered virus, and this comes in, and it's specifically spreading in the gay community. While I understand the sentiment that, like, look, we're just trying to be honest about what's going on and deal with this adequately, I think we also have to empathize with the mistrust of a lot of people coming after them, or specifically saying, oh, well, this is just a problem that's a you problem and things like that. Because I feel for a lot of people that have grown up in that community, or have no older people in that community, or have done their research, that are a part of the LGBT community, I think they're rightly looking at what could occur if it continues down this line with an adequate amount of fear, which is that it wasn't that long ago that the government was willing to sacrifice and kill them because it didn't give a fuck about a bunch of gay people and black people dying, so long as it wasn't happening too much in our white communities. And that's not that long ago. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I just don't want to be tone deaf to people being like, why the fuck are you coming after my people?
I don't think there's I think there's a difference between education on the issue and showing that there's like, oh, this isn't specifically STD. There's multiple ways, like, you know, like everyone has some level of risk, and saying and dealing with like, oh, okay, we have a limited number of vaccines. Who should we give them to? Should we say first come first serve, or should we make an effort to target, like, to try to help out the population that seems to be at highest risk? But just because we have limited resources, I think that just makes more sense. Like,
I'm just saying we gotta be careful with like not understanding at all why people might be offended by that. If they got good reason to be.
No, I understand. I think that they're just comparing two things that shouldn't be compared. But that's it.
Fanatic?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I guess I don't really have anything to contribute right now.
Sorry, were you gonna say something else?
Oh no, I just didn't want to take the time from Fanatic. But I guess a third point with this would be would basically be no, it was kind of responding to what Fabian said. Like, I think we were targeted with our donations to Ukraine. We didn't decide that, like, oh, okay, let's give a little bit of resources to there's a lot of countries. Like, I don't think we should all lives matter this situation is basically what I'm saying. I'm saying that, like, if we have a community that's dealing with something, I don't think that it's a bad thing to be very specific and very in the ways you deal with that, because that, as a part of the, like, I always talk about Black issues. I'm always asking for Black people to be targeted more specifically. Anything like I don't because I feel like it's necessary if you actually want to help groups.
So I wanted to try to relate this because some people well, okay, I think that these things are connected, right? I think when it comes to this moral panic we're having in society about the LGBTQ community, where you have teachers, right, who would be, first line defense in all this education, who are afraid to even talk about homosexuality, period, because we're passing laws to say, hey, don't only mention that. And whether or not, because we don't need to get in a conversation about like what exactly that law says, because a lot of people are going to be wrong on this issue. But the point
mostly
is that,
you.
Sure, whatever. But the point is that people have fear around what these laws are saying, right? And it's changing their behavior, and it's making it more difficult to get information out, right? Or just talk about the gay community in general. And we're setting such a toxic environment, and a dangerous environment, a very extremely dangerous environment. Are we not setting the seeds for more disaster later on, where other diseases like this, right? Like, I remember at the start of this, I said, like, not just talking about monkeypox, but the future, right? Built into the question, but the future, where we'll have more of these types of epidemics that'll come down the line, right? If we have a society that is more dangerous to our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, and a society that is less equipped in terms of sex education, right? Like, is that going to cause a problem, or maybe not? Maybe a conservative thought on this is actually correct, and yeah.
It's not that hard, Prime. It's not. I really feel like it's not that hard to have schools go wear a condom when you have sex with your partner. Like, they don't have to mention a sex on the opposite side, and they can still give good sexual advice. I don't think it's that big of an issue. While I do disagree with the "Don't Say Gay" bill, and I've made that fairly well known since the "Don't Say Gay" bill came out in Florida. I don't think it would be an issue even in states to just say, like, wear a condom when you have sex with your partner. Do this when you have sex with your partner, and just give that person like the way they can be safe without going into like demonstrations of how you have sex with your partner. Like, I think it can be done very well, and it can teach someone how to be safe when they're deciding to get romantic or get very sentimental with their partner.
I would like to say that you trying to tie like the general fear of the LGBT community into like this weird idea that like somehow this has an effect on monkeypox or makes the environment less safe, whilst also ignoring why the entire groomer thing is such a big cultural issue, because you have literal teachers like isolating children from their parents and talking about fucking anal sex.
Yeah.
Like you're the group pushing narratives that's damaging to healthy sex education.
Wait a minute. You can't do this. No, wait a second. Fabian,
you're the ones doing this shit.
You started out this the first thing you said was talking about like, oh, let's not do the thing where we make all conservatives abstinence only. We're talking about the extreme small group, and then you do the exact same thing. Like
no, it's not. It's very logical. I'm saying he's trying to force this. I'm saying he's trying to force this conversation about groomers, and then trying to somehow make this spurious connection to monkeypox and the way that we deal with that. And what I'm saying is that the two are not connected. And you're saying, well, you're trying to say that these individuals are doing like healthy education, that's somehow stopping healthy education. And I'm saying this is exactly unhealthy education. And that's why conservatives are so fucking pissed.
So you think it's the sex education that's grooming kids? Is that basically what you're saying?
No, milieu.
I'm having difficulty
fucking young children and trying to teach young children wild shit that has gotten out of control for political ideological means, and not caring what the fucking fallouts of that abuse of children is. That's happening.
Move the topic in the direction of. So we want to talk about like teaching kids anal sex in school is a thing that's going on, and that's grooming.
I mean, these are isolated incidents, obviously, but like, yeah, that happens.
Yeah, it sounds like a very isolated incident. I don't know what the prevalence of it is. Is it growing prevalence?
It's very prevalent in the broader culture, because people all over
broader culture.
And like he said, he specifically mentioned first and second graders. That was my if he was talking about like 8th graders or high schoolers,
teenagers,
yeah,
like
then that would be a different conversation. But like saying that like there's a prevalence.
They literally show children's videos to people under 3rd grade where they're talking about masturbation.
Oh, again, but dealing with it, is it a hyper relevant thing? Because you just said you did, and everyone has respected the idea of not framing all conservatives as this abstinence only community. But you're doing the exact same. I'm asking why? How can you not see this? You're literally trying to frame it as a prevalent thing.
What I'm saying is if you want to talk about, if you want to try and draw this connection that anti-groomer shit is somehow related to monkeypox, and then you want to say that it's working in this way that's preventing healthy sex education and fear. What I'm saying is that very type of education is not healthy. That's all I'm pointing out.
Spartacus was saying that. I don't think he was
PrimeCayes was saying that.
You think Prime was saying that first graders having anal sex?
He was making, without understanding, a chilling effect doctrine argument, right? The idea that because some forms of speech and education are being stifled, that it works in other areas of individuals' free speech to be able to educate children appropriately. And I'm saying, no, it's exactly unhealthy education, and that's part and parcel why people fucking hate it.
I don't think that is what Prime is saying. I don't think Prime is suggesting that because we're leaving out the education of anal sex, for sub 3rd graders, that we're having a spread, that this is going to contribute to the spread of monkeypox.
That's not what I said.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I think Prime. I think at the end of my statement, I could be wrong, but I think at the end of my statement, Prime even agreed with what I said. So, like,
it's a huge leap.
Prime's here; he can speak for himself.
Scott, it seems like you're making a massive leap here in what he's saying.
I'm not making a massive leap. Prime is making the massive leap by trying to tie groomers to the way we look at fucking monkeypox, and I'm breaking down that rationality and why it doesn't make sense.
Look at the question. How did I?
But it requires you guys to hold two thoughts at the same time.
I know. But let me read the question again to you, all right? So it talks about, hey, World Health Organization has declared monkeypox to be an international public health emergency. As of now, the transmission seems to be almost exclusively between men who have sex with men. However, at the same time, in the U.S., we have a conservative movement that has criticized and terrorized teachers as being child sexual groomers for either talking about LGBT issues or discussing education.
So there's one leap.
Are conservatives' fears about grooming making the public less prepared to deal with a future where more of these types of epidemics will keep emerging, right? Not necessarily about monkeypox, about a future where all that happens, where you have these effects and it makes these things difficult. But then on the other side of it,
you made your question sufficiently vague while still making leaps. Because
whatever.
No conservatives are out here mad that teachers are teaching kids
all the time. I love it when you do these statements all the time, Scott. Right? Because all the time you come on here and no conservatives are doing this crazy fuking thing. Yeah, there are plenty of conservatives doing that crazy fucking thing all the goddamn time.
You didn't even hear the rest of my sentence.
There are crazy fucking conservatives doing. I've listened to you for the last few minutes. I actually know what the fuck you're saying. Yeah, I get it, Scott. But any which way, right?
What was I going to say then? You get it. What was I going to say then?
Shut up, Scott. Please.
What was I going to say?
Right? Oh my God, Scott, shut the fuck up.
You can't, can you?
Oh my God, Scott, shut the fuck up.
Either be a moderator or be a panelist.
Don't worry.
Go ahead. What was I going to say?
I'm gonna be a moderator. Don't worry. I gotta be a moderator.
What was I going to say?
Don't
be a coward. Answer it.
Don't
be a coward.
Don't worry.
Don't be a coward.
Shut the fuck up. There you go. Took me a while to get to the server mute button. I love it. So any which way, right? Like as if I fucking give a shit, right? Or I have to dance loose for you, right? Like the point is, that these that this idea of grooming isn't based on anything fucking rational. We have a moral panic. These things spread and they grow, right? They are like as you see with fucking CRT. CRT is even a better example of this, right? It was just critical race theory. I'm concerned about how our history is being taught within our schools. That's all it is, right? And I think this is being improper. But then everything gets called critical race theory at some point in time, right? Even though it's not, even though it's a thing that's mostly limited to colleges, right? Everything becomes critical race theory, and then they start using an excuse to get rid of anything, right? They'll we have literal book burnings happening around critical race theory, right? This idea, whatever the fuck that is, like going through middle school libraries and tossing out those books, right? Like this is what happens, and not just for that, but also again, because they think those books are grooming individuals. See, that's a dumb fuck thing that conservatives do, right? A dumb fuck thing that conservatives believe. And so this is why I'm relating it to grooming, because conservatives are so prone to dumb fuckery like that, right? Because they're so prone to that, I'm wondering if this can make ourselves less prepared to give people the information they need in the future when more of these things happen. Obviously, what's happening in this current discussion about grooming, right, and this current pandemic about monkeypox can't be related, because these things there's no way that one can bleed into the other that quickly, right? Like, obviously not. But I'm talking about, and it says it in the question, because that's how I fucking wrote it, talking about a future of these epidemics where more of these types of diseases will happen. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you.
And further proving Prime's point, I just want to, because it'll stick. It'll be really quick because I've said too much already. Further proving Prime's point is like a real life example of recent history is conservatives were freaking out and banning and threatening to leave State Farm because State Farm was handing out was voluntarily giving books to literally parents in schools that had images of like gender equality and sexual equality, and the conservatives literally they were not talking about first graders doing anal sex. We're just talking about gay people existing in books. And the conservatives said that State Farm was grooming children.
Grooming.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, so a slight rewording is basically that Prime. What you're trying to say, or what you're a big concern here, is that there are a couple things going on. There's obviously the straw manning of the LGBTQ community as groomers and grooming, as well as straw manning more comprehensive sex education, and then stigmatizing that and causing a panic over it. That's going to basically cause sex education to regress and become more primitive and less comprehensive, and then later contribute to more risk of STI and other types of things. So that sounds like effectively what you're you're talking about here.
Yeah, specifically, at least when we were talking, well, maybe other forms of sex, but at least in a form of gay sex. But I think this actually plays into heteronormative sex as well.
Yeah, that's why I said also sex education overall, stigmatizing sex education overall. Yeah, and so that's why it didn't make sense to me what you were saying, Scott. It just seemed like you were sort of like leaping to something that did not sound like what Prime was saying. I don't know, maybe I misread it.
I'm gonna unmute Scott so Scott can respond. Thank you, Scott. Please, thanks.
I mean, I already made my argument, which is that he was attempting to make this spurious connection, that it would somehow lead to a chilling effect, but he didn't understand that, and that he was making the connection that the case against grooming was somehow leading to this right-wing kind of resurgence or, attacks in some regard, and that this would somehow lead to more difficulties in dealing with these situations, which I think is silly. Also, you muted me because you couldn't respond to the fact that you said that you knew what I was going to say.
No, I muted you because,
and then you immediately
even if
went
I
into
say it,
critical race theory.
So
here's my deal.
You're like, oh, well,
here's my deal,
PrimeCayes. Because we've done this before. Like, what did I say?
Here's my deal.
And I say it, then you're like, oh, well, that's not what I meant to say. Even though,
so here's
it
what
follows exactly your form of thought.
You're proving yourself a coward by doing so. But you can.
Okay, coward. Sorry, thanks. Once again, muted. Keep going. So any which way, let's go. I'll please.
Okay, so what Scott's saying has some merit, but I think he doesn't go far enough, all right? I think that there is this spurless correlation, because I don't think there'll ever be a time where, like, there's going to be such a... Unless there's like some evil like James Bond villain who's twirling his mustache saying, I'm specifically gonna make a gay disease that's actually gonna kill gay people specifically. I don't think there's anything that a normal sex ed class that you would teach to straight people wouldn't also apply to gay people. If all you have to do is say, okay guys, wear a condom when you have sex, especially if you're gonna have anal sex, because there's risk of micro tears and lesions in there, blood-borne diseases, things of that nature. So I think that is bad. Okay, and going further, like I said, it's going further because it's not just people in schools that are doing the so-called grooming. I think what is going on is the broader social and cultural milieu that's going on. Like I said, like being like totally sex positive, like free love and sex work is real work and things of that nature, slut walks and like that type of culture, Pride March culture as well. I think those are also grooming. Not in the sense that any one person is actually an actor trying to coerce people and things, but I think it's just like it's so suffused in the culture that people just growing up in this environment can take into like these ideas that it's okay to have like an orgy and not have protected sex because like everyone's doing it, everyone thinks it's okay, everyone thinks it's glamorous or like an actual thing that is like worthwhile in society. And so I think that's why I said in my opening that I don't blame like the people who got monkeypox through these who may or may not have gotten it through promiscuous dealings, because I think they're just as much victims as anyone else. But I do think that going forward, we should tell people to be a bit more responsible with their bodies and what they're doing.
I feel like y'all might need some sex education.
I think so too.
Is Isle of Isles a fellow prude, by the way?
Absolutely.
No, I think that people who are like pushing like the sex negative, like you should never have sex. I think those people are just puritanical and authoritarians if they're trying to like police other people what they're doing. But you got to be smart about it. You can't just say, you know what, it's Gay Pride Month, so I'm gonna have like a 30-person orgy and parade in the streets half butt naked. Like
let's go to. So the answer is yes. Doobie, please.
Well, I'm kind of curious. So given that I think you guys would agree that we want schools to be kind of teaching children how to get onto a life path that's going to benefit them long term, right? They need to learn the skills. They need to have a good and happy life. But like, given that we understand, right? There's tons of research on this, that people that have actually fewer sexual partners, people who aren't sex positive whores, really, who aren't sluts, who aren't whores, who aren't flinging their dick around, humping every ass they see. Those people are actually much less happy long term than the ones who don't do that, and the ones who are more reserved with their sexual activity, right? Who are more responsible, right? The people who wait until marriage are actually happier long term than people who don't. Right? So what's the issue with that being the focus of this education? I'm not saying you can't teach the other things, right? But what's the issue with telling people, hey, long term, if you want a happier life, this seems to be the way to do it.
I think those studies probably need to be updated over time. Like I think if you,
to be fair, most of that is people just going to church. Like most of it is people that go to church are happier. That's the major correlation there.
I'm sure that's part of it.
So it's the social capital of having, like, being connected with your community, knowing a bunch of people, sharing in shared values and goals with a community of people. Like, most of it is people that go to church tend to be much, much happier than people who don't. And people that tend to go to church tend to be, not involved as often in, sex orgies in the Canaries and then on BDSM club with monkeypox in Belgium.
Not the piles of dicks and asses. Yeah.
Right.
But so was it Bam? Did you want to respond to that?
Oh yeah, I think that like I said, I think that whatever study you can find today, like I said, I actually probably agree with Fabian there. It probably is more so related to having some sense of community, and some I guess your morality being led by having a religion gives you guidance, it gives you stability.
Well, it's mostly social capital. Read Robert Putnam's Bowling.
I'm really trying to. I can't even agree with you. Dang. I'm saying that, like, yeah, I think that's generally the case. But I think that I think as you update that over the next few years, like over the next few decades, I think you'll see people who had like what we would consider pretty casual sex lives still went on to have marriages and kids and all like, and are happy, or maybe they didn't have those things, but maybe like they'll check a box saying that they're happy with where their lives at.
Yeah,
I agree with.
I was gonna say, other than the owl, I think that what I wasn't joking. I was saying we may actually. I feel like we're missing sex education because I don't like when you're dealing with anal sex and we're dealing with like just different types of sex in general. Sex ed is more than just wear a condom or don't have sex. Like there's ways, and this isn't for elementary schoolers, for anyone who's about to make a straw man. But if you're dealing with like people who are getting, into those upper ages, like those upper teens, like you can't just jump in straight into like having sex when you're LGBT. Like there are different things that you need to know outside of just the typical cis like wear a condom rhetoric.
And I want to build a little bit on what you said.
Wait, hold on.
Because
what would be anything that would be distinguished there, Bam? What do you mean?
If it gets weird, but if you're going to do anal, I know people who say that like you have to prep, like you can't go to dinner, like eat a steak and then go do anal. Like it's just not going to turn out well. One, just like from a romantic perspective, two, from like a health perspective, it's not super safe to do things like that.
So
we'll have two problems with that.
I want to build a little bit. I want to build a little bit on what Bam said because I think it's important. So
I have two problems.
Zonia first.
Zonia is building. Yeah, Zonia's agree on.
Yeah,
like it's not a different point.
So one of the things that Bam was saying in there is that this is the direction that society is going. It's becoming more and more sex positive, and things are going to become more promiscuous. And that's something that you can't really change, right? And I mean, meme a lot because I'm asexual, and I think it's fun to meme on people who have sex. But the reality is that's the direction that society is going. So we can't just pretend that we can somehow roll that back, 40 years and get everybody back on track to having generally single or what do you call it, two-person relationships and monogamy, and marriage and all that crap. Guess what? Out the window for more and more as time goes on. So pretending that we can somehow roll the clock back on that is just naive. So we do have to move in a direction that compensates for that and factors in that change in society, the sex positivity and the promiscuity, and builds a comprehensive sex education around those elements of society that are inevitable, that are part of our society.
Just real quick, why do you think hedonism is inevitable and that the culture can't change?
I don't think you can roll back the clock. The society is moving in that direction. It's only ever moved in that direction forward, in the last 100 years. So unless we want to think that sometime, in another 100 years from now, we'll roll it back again, like another 100 years, 150 years. But that would be naive. That would be a pipe dream to think that may happen, but gambling on that is just naive.
Zonia, so it's been rolled back from prior history, right? Prior history was more sexually promiscuous. I don't necessarily know if it's a gamble. You can see it throughout history. It gets rolled forward and backwards as time goes on.
Can you predict it?
I can say that through the pattern of behavior of history, it's going to roll forwards and backwards.
But you can't predict when, so you may as well.
I can't predict when. No one can predict when, but I can predict that it's going to roll backwards at some point in time.
You may as well build in a comprehensive education around what society is doing now.
I'm not saying don't build an education. I was the person that said build an education. But what I'm saying is that to say that it's not going to go forwards and backwards is a little bit weird to me, because it's happened over and over again in history.
I didn't say it's not going to have that ebb and flow, but you may as well assume that it's not going to, because you can't predict when it's going to go back. So you may as well assume the worst.
I don't know. I think the cultural right,
or in some cases assume the best, but from my perspective, the worst.
I mean, I would say that I think the cultural right is ascendant in some ways, because we have had so much leftism in philosophically that you're beginning to see, like, the America First people, the populist conservatives. You have the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and so much of the cultural right is ready to change the laws in that regard. Like, I don't know that it's necessarily a safe assumption. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying I'm not so sure that it's a safe assumption that we're going to get more hedonism in the future.
Well, think about all the times
Gen
that it
Z
did
is the
go
most.
Back. Think about all the times that it did roll back. Those times were when there was a large fundamental church that changed culture, right?
Like the Second Great Awakening or something.
And the Ottoman Empire and the Church of England, Catholic Church. There were these moments in time where a significant religious authority managed to change culture and kind of bring it into its fold, and then the behavior changed.
I don't know that I would accept that Marcusean framing that institutions are necessarily the drivers of cultural change. I would probably take more of a sociological lens of systems theory and open systems, because I think it is both the people that change institutions and institutions that change people. And I would say that there is a kind of ascendant right-wing culture that is occurring in our culture, for better or worse.
Culture is shaped by art.
I would generally agree with that, but I
don't care about art.
That's not true, actually. Look at ISOM's campaign that's made well over $3 million in the fight against Marvel and DC. You have comic book campaigns coming out.
$3 million in the fight against Marvel.
I'm saying $3 million in their first fucking sales is huge.
Yeah.
So
I mean, right wing is definitely getting into art. Look at Vaporwave and things like that.
But regardless, this is still a gamble. So you still have to build a comprehensive education system around what's going on right now. And because things have continually moved in a direction of being much more sexually permissive and positive, you should assume that is going to continue being the direction and compensate for that and have the education,
I'm saying that you're making an equal gamble by assuming that we're going to have a more hedonistic culture.
No, because if you did not evolve the education based on that trajectory, then you would screw up, and there would be a lot more people making a lot more stupid mistakes.
No, I'd say what we should do is what 95% of conservatives want, which is 95% of Republicans want comprehensive sex education that includes abstinence. I don't see the issue here.
But Republicans are then loading in the term groomer to try to weed out other elements of that comprehensive sex education.
They're not.
I think most of us
in the
all
term
are
groomer
okay.
when you're abusing children.
I think
that's
most of us.
not true. We know that's not exactly what's happening.
I think that most of us can agree that including abstinence as like sort of like an understanding that you should be abstinent until you are ready. I think most of us can kind of agree that that's something that's okay to have in sex education and is desirable. But you have conservatives then saying, "Oh, but we want to weed out a whole bunch of other things that we don't agree with because they don't fit with our view of what sexual behavior should be." And they do that by stigmatizing it, by calling it grooming, right?
You're not.
That's what they do.
No, that's not like. This is the problem, is that like you're looking at it from a left-wing perspective of a very small minority of like loud voices online. The overwhelming majority of Republican voters and the right are not looking at groomers as like anybody gay. Like that's just, or like talking.
I disagree with
Florida. Florida had a big old legislative battle for
for people
4 months over this very thing. Because it started out broader than that, and they wanted to rein it in even in high school education.
So what you're saying is it wouldn't have passed even by Republican congressmen that are authoritarian and their social values unless it only included third grade and below?
It eventually got whittled down a bit more and reined in a bit more. However, it started out being very broad, and it was a panic response based on that exact same stigmatization of grooming.
So cooler heads prevailed, and then it got down.
But
because
address specifically what I said
social
earlier.
Conservative politicians that are old as fuck couldn't get it through unless they watered it down to specifically deal with third graders and below.
But what about the lack of trying and a campaign of loaded terms like grooming?
I don't. I'm just. It seems like you're just attacking the word grooming, and you don't have anything to back it up.
But because you're playing dumb. I'm
not playing dumb.
I don't think I'm not. I don't think you're playing dumb. I think deep down you legitimately believe this. But I think that like the evidence would tell you that they're not talking. The Republicans' issue isn't specifically with this hyper fixation of like your example earlier of teaching first graders about anal sex. I don't believe that's the line they're drawing. I believe that
the line that most of them are drawing, if you pay attention to them, is that the political philosophy of the left is destroying education, and that they believe that it's Marxist indoctrination, and that they're using critical race theory, and they're using sex ideology or gender Marxism, whatever, as attack vectors for creating little commie kids. That's what most of the right believes. That's why James Lindsay is so fucking popular.
It's not even little it's not even little kids. I think even up to a high school level. If you actually poll the average conservative, if they believe that like the concept of gender should be brought up in comprehensive sex ed, I feel like the average conservative would have an issue with it. They would say no.
In high school, I mean, I don't know. You'd have to look at that data, but it would more than likely stem from the fact that they don't trust these people to not attempt to politically indoctrinate their children. That's really the real fear from conservatives. Political indoctrination.
I'm not. But I'm saying that you can make that argument. You can justify it however you want. But it's not the idea. Their issue isn't just the idea of someone's going to like put their hands on my first grader. That's not the thing. That's not where they draw the line at. They have an issue with LGBT stuff in general. Like again, for whatever
they have an issue with gender ideology.
Reason. Yes,
that's not the same thing as teaching gender.
Yes, they have an issue with gender ideology in general. Exactly. That I will accept those terms, but nothing less than that. It's not just about pedophilia or grooming. They have an issue with gender ideology.
But that's not what the term grooming means to the right.
But it is gender ideology.
Grooming can be used by cults. It doesn't have to be sexual. What they're worried about is triangulating kids, and that includes high school kids, because high school kids are still kids, triangulating children and teenagers away from their parents and attempting to indoctrinate them into a political philosophy and destroy the values and the relationship between the parent and those kids. And they find that to be damaging and grooming.
Sure, but under that,
it's not just pedophiles.
But under that exact same definition, like under the definition you just gave, that would include the same trans people exist. That falls under exactly.
No, it literally wouldn't.
It absolutely does.
Where does saying trans people exist have anything to do with triangulating children from their parents?
Because it's considered, it would fall under the indoctrinating ideology. So
no, because triangulating children from their parents is totally separate than
because their parents don't
certain things.
The parents don't believe trans people exist. So if they say that the school told me that trans people exist, conservatives would have an issue with that.
Triangulating things from your parents is saying, don't tell your parents about this, or you don't have to tell your parents about this. This is a safe space where we can talk about our views and things like that, and your parents never have to know, right? That is why HB 1557 is called Parental Rights and Education Bill, as opposed to the don't say gay bill, even though it never mentions gay.
Right. So
because they're concerned with their parental rights.
Right. I understand your perfect framing of it, but I'm going to ask you now, do you think
literally the name of the bill?
I'm not talking about the bill. I'm talking about what people believe. I'm going to ask you now, do you believe that conservatives generally are pro-trans or anti-trans or agnostic to trans?
I would say that most of them lean somewhere between agnostic and maybe anti if they tie it to the political philosophy. I would say most conservatives that I know don't give a fuck if transgender adults are transgender adults.
We're not adults. Do we believe that teaching people that their children of high school age or whatever age that trans people, do you think that the average conservative would have an issue with this?
I would say that the average conservative is obviously more scientific here as opposed to the anti-science left that believes that you can have such a thing as like trans kids, as opposed to children with gender dysphoria that should be treated appropriately, as opposed with surgery and medication that can have horrendous life-altering effects.
You going to answer my question?
I just did.
No, you said that you believe that the right.
I just didn't do it in the simple framing that you wanted. Exactly.
No, I'm fine. I'm actually, I hate people who do the gotchas. I'm absolutely. I don't want a one word answer. I want you to tell your point, however you feel it. But it has to start from the answer. I asked you, do you believe that they generally have an issue with trans people? And you responded with, conservatives want to handle gender affirming, don't have an issue with gender affirming care.
That's not
having an issue with gender affirming care.
I said they're fine with adults.
Right.
But I think when you say that trans kids, they would not agree with that. They would not agree with that framing. That they would agree that they are children that have gender dysphoria, which may or may not result in the best outcome for them being transgender as an adult. But when you have certain studies that show anywhere from it's like 30% to 97%, the data is not very conclusive. But when you have individuals that socially transition and then don't fully transition if they're not given hormone replacement therapy or androgen therapy, things like Lupron and things like that, and gender affirming care, that they believe that this is damaging to children.
Sure, I believe it's complicated.
This idea somehow being tied to our ability to deal with pandemics in the LGBT community is not connected, and to make that connection is insane. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying that the topic of the panel kind of is framed in such a way.
Sure, but we sway to a different thing, and I maybe this is my opinion, and you can say that no, they don't feel this way. I believe that, because I live among conservatives, I believe that the majority of conservatives have an issue with anything related to LGBT people's existences in general being mentioned in school. I think that they generally find a problem with that. Whether they have a problem with
that you live with are black.
No, I actually live in a white conservative town.
So you're talking about mostly white conservatives that you're talking about?
Yeah, but black people are probably
I found
worse,
a lot more
honestly.
anti-LGBT stuff when going into the black community than white conservatives in general.
I don't know about worse, but it's definitely a problem.
Let's go to Isle. Isle, you never got a chance to speak. I want to make sure you get in there.
Okay, I was gonna say that pretty much I agree with what Scott was saying, is that with the groomer thing, it's not necessarily that people are calling them groomers because they're gay. It's because of the theology and the evangelizing that they sometimes do in trying to further their agendas. for activism's sake, you know, and then sometimes they go too far and it can be off-putting to the normal person. And so I think
what you're talking about, Isle, is you're talking about like libs of TikTok kind of things. You're talking about like the very, very minority of the minority of what actually happens in schools. Someone in chat tried to bring up a Washington bill that was passed regarding education in schools, and they're trying to teach kindergartners sex. And I looked into the bill, and it turns out that they're just trying to teach kindergartners consent, which I don't disagree with teaching kindergartners consent. I think it's an important lesson to learn when you're young, is what is consent and how do you read consent. And even if that doesn't involve sex, if that just involves like hugging, or if that involves like high fives or whatever that may involve, it doesn't have to involve sex to learn consent. And so I looked through that while I was debating here and showed chat like, no, this is about consent for kindergartners. This isn't about sex. But
that's not true.
But I've seen. It is true. I just looked through the bill. But I've seen conservatives get mad about this kind of stuff, and it's because they're the idea that the libs of TikTok is all schools, and it's just not.
That's not the only danger and the only fears from the conservatives, right? Obviously, libs of TikTok is taking the worst example of like some of the craziest teachers in a country of like 330 million people. And like, we shouldn't look at that any more than like World Star Hip Hop as like a fucking example of like what New York City looks like. That being said, we're also talking about transformative social emotional learning. We're talking about Paulo Freire. We're talking about critical pedagogy. We're talking about the fact that the education system and the fact that the people that teach education in academia have an extreme ideological bent often. And that we're not just talking about this isolated incidence of individual teachers being a problem, but we're talking about things like transformative social emotional learning, how CASEL has transformed something that was designed for conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder, and instead brought psychotherapy into the classroom in the form of Maoist struggle sessions, and using transformative social emotional learning as a means of intentionally, and they state themselves regularly. If you just watch the fucking places where teachers go for conferences and you read their academic literature, it is specifically designed to create a vanguard political party for, quote, critical democracy. Like, this is the type of shit that they're talking about. Deep political indoctrination that's using things like gender ideology and critical race theory as an attack vector towards moving these philosophies into children, so that they don't need to be taught Marxist philosophy. They will simply think like a Marxist.
Maoist struggle sessions, and we're the ones who are delusional. All right. Thank you all.
Yeah, you can only
so
run
much.
from it for so long.
Yes. I got it. Any day now. All right. Revolution will happen. Thank you all so much for having this.
Wait. I just wanted to ask you a question, just real quick. When you invited me to the panel, you said, "Woohoo! You're gonna drive me crazy," and then I said, "I think that we would have an agreement on the second topic." Did we agree?
What did we agree on? You kept agreeing with Scott, and I was disagreeing with Scott. What did we agree on?
Oh, that we shouldn't press the LGBT community and think that they are vectors of disease over proportionally to anyone else.
Anyone else could be a vector of a disease, but like in this case, it's without a doubt that LGBT community is, the gay male community specifically, is the epicenter of this, right? I don't want to fearmonger about them to say that, like, you know, gay people with disease or whatever the fuck, right? It just happens to be a disease that is affecting a certain population, like many other diseases affect certain populations.
Be targeted with our solutions.
Yeah. So sure, I guess maybe. We have a thing. I mean, we also. I'm assuming we agree the sky is blue, but I'm not sure that's enough. So let's continue on, audience. We are going to continue on to open welcome panel. We are not done with the content. We never are, right? So we have open welcome panel. You sitting at home and participate. You want to come in, want to talk about these topics or other topics, we'd love to have you. And we give you that space, right? I'm just going to give an outro to all these amazing individuals, then we'll do that. But before we do that, Expert Social in chat, first of all, hit us up with a follow on YouTube, right? Sorry, excuse me, Twitch. Follow on Twitch, and then hit us up on our various social media accounts like Twitter, Discord, TikTok, and then of course YouTube, where you'll find the VODs. Like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so very much. Okay, we are going to move on and give an outro to all our fine guests, who I very much appreciate. Even this the first one here, our friend Scott. No, actually I do. I say all the time, I still mean it despite when we have friction. Scott, thank you so much for coming through and giving your opinion, because your opinion generally is far more different from anyone else's.
Of course it is. So I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. We're an anarcho-capitalist duo stream. Come check us out. Do news, do politics, do debates, do all the fun stuff. We've been doing a lot of interviews lately, and I just want to pimp Wednesday, Yaron Brook from the Ayn Rand, chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute, famous objectivist, will be having a conversation with us. Should be lots of fun. That said, Prime, you muted me quite a few times tonight, pivoting away from a question. And whilst I was muted, you interestingly brought up critical race theory. And so, you know, I find it interesting that the one time you're willing to speak about that is when I'm muted, whenever I'm on a panel with you. So I would say that's a coward's move. But if you say it's not a coward's move, I challenge you right now to any debate on critical race theory whenever you fucking want. So long as my schedule's available, come at me, because you know I'm going to fuck you up on that. So anytime you want to talk critical race theory, have at it. Thank you, Fabian Liberty, Scott. Otherwise, I'm assuming you're a coward for muting me and not taking that debate.
We talk about critical race theory all the time here. But if you want to have a debate specifically on critical race theory, I would love to do that. That would be a lot of fun. I've been wondering what would be a good topic for us to have a conversation on, one-on-one about. And if you want to do CRT, it sounds like a great plan. Thank you so much.
Sounds like a blast.
Okay. Yeah. Looking forward to it, honestly. Let's go to my man Fanatic, who's another person I need to debate one-on-one, right? Just gotta figure I feel like we disagree on a bunch of stuff, but like I don't know like what would be like an optimal debate, right? And maybe it's just me, stalling, but like I feel like I want something good if we're gonna do a 1v1 debate. Fanatic.
Yeah, I'd be down anytime. I was thinking about it, and I was like, yo, I'd like to debate Fabian on critical race theory. And then I just think about how terrible these conversations go, and I'm like, not without a moderator. But I don't know. Maybe you're different in one-on-one conversations than you are on panels, like I very much am. I don't know. But yeah, I think this panel was ridiculous. I think everybody's points were so ridiculous that it just wasn't worth interacting with. But yeah, twitch.tv/MrFanatic, that's where you find me. Playing League of Legends and doing music and all the other base things that I'm involved in. Follow me there.
Thanks so much. All right, Isle, thanks as well for coming through and being a part of this. Not so much for agreeing with Scott, but we all have our failures in life. Okay, so thank you, Isle, for being around.
Thank you. I'm Isle of Isles, resident person in Shadow right now. And you know what? I guess I also have to throw down the gauntlet. And Prime, I'm challenging you to a debate on the gospel of wealth, because I think that you are a little bit too, you cast evil aspersions on people who have more money than you, and I think that's wrong and immoral. So I'm gonna debate it out of you.
Debate the gospel. Oh, what's the gospel of wealth? It's not the prosperity gospel, right? That's something different.
Yeah.
Okay.
The rich people have the
research.
Yeah, you said that robber barons are like being trying to do PR campaigns and whatnot. I'm gonna debate you that they're actually moral, and maybe even more moral than you, Prime.
Okay, so all right, so we'll have to work out exactly what this debate is about a little later on. But yeah, sure, right? Look, I have L's to hand out to everybody. All right, don't worry, I have enough. Right, I got a new shipment over here. Right, so one for each of you. All right, you get an L, you get an L, you get an L. All right, no problem.
Everybody gets an L.
Exactly. All right, but thank you so much. Hey, everyone wants to challenge me, pick my galaxy-sized brain, then it works for me. All right. So let's go over to our friend Bam. All right, Bam. Do you want any of the smoke? Right? Are you looking for it too?
I want all the smoke, but I don't have anything to talk about right now, except for that. I will probably debate you in One Piece and win.
No, the fuck you won't. That's the one thing. Holy, okay, that's what gets me.
that I was gonna say that you had no shot. Just to be honest with you. But speaking of other media, really quick, obviously we're in our outros. Nope was really good. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's the second most creative movie of the year. And probably the most creative blockbuster. I think it was pretty unpredictable. Jordan Peele 3 for 3, and Fanatic is given terrible. I can just tell he has a bad media take about me. But yeah, I'm Bam. And as I came, I saw, I conquered.
I have not seen any of Jordan Peele's work, right? Not because I don't want to or anything like that. It just hasn't happened yet.
If you haven't seen Jordan Peele, you ain't black.
That's true, right? As ghastly as our friend Scott here. Okay. Thank you, Sprouticus, fantastic friend of the channel. Thanks for stopping by, and being part of this.
I appreciate any time I'm on a debate panel. Just to plug a little bit, I'm tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm having a conversation with Taftaj about guns. She said that no American should own a gun. So we're having that discussion tomorrow at 6:30, and then Wednesday at 8 p.m. I'm going to talk with Half Baked Takes. And so that's going to be a general discussion. So make sure you guys pop by for both those. You can find me at twitter.com/thespraticus and twitch.tv/thespraticus. Appreciate it, Prime.
Absolutely. And that conversation with Taftaj actually sounds super interesting. Maybe I'll be able to get a chance to tune into that.
It should be good.
Yeah. I'm really curious as to how that would... And Taft is the conservative too. I'm actually really curious where she places herself. But thank you so much. Okay. Next we have one of our biggest supporters, honestly. Thank you so much for being around. Zonia for coming through, and then also trolling my second topic. Much appreciated there, friend. Zonia, thanks for all the kindness just in general, and thanks for coming through and being part of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me on again. And despite some of my absurd things that I like to say sometimes, I'm actually quite sex positive and very much a live and let live type. So I lean pretty libertarian for most things. So you may find me joking about sex negativity in these kinds of situations because I am asexual, and I do find a lot of things absurd when it comes to sexuality, or confusing even. But it's not really to bag on people or make people feel bad. And I think that people should experience their sexuality how they feel best fits them, and without shame. That being said, I may shame you just for the fun of it. Anyways, this topic sure was a mess. I found it a little hard to contribute, honestly, and it seems like it was kind of dominated by just a couple of people. Really seems like a lot of us ended up staying out of a good portion of it. In many ways, I kind of agree with Fanatic here on this. Prime, as for debating, I don't know. We tend to agree on a lot of stuff, but maybe we can find something. Like maybe we can debate on what is the coolest animal in the animal kingdom or something. But yeah, anyways, outside of that, Zonia Dead at Twitch. Take a look at my About page to get access to my other stuff. I also have a Discord. Hop in, hang out with me. I've been streaming Stray in my Discord lately. So if you want to hang out with me while I do that and talk about random stuff, feel free. Thanks again.
You don't agree that the coolest animal is an ocelot, then you're fucking dead to me. But
bees.
Bees are the fucking... Okay. All right.
Don't reinforce the stereotype, PrimeCayes.
Last but not least, we have our Dark Lord and Savior, Doobie, aka Apollo of Dicks and Asses. Doobie, thank you for coming through, being a part of this. Doobie, you're always much appreciated, even when you say very little and just are here to provide background flavor. Doobie, please.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you need to let the peasants, contribute a little to the conversation. It's fine. just FYI, if you guys are interested, we are going to be having an AMA with Alex Stein on my server on Sunday. Alex Stein is the guy who got in trouble recently for calling AOC a big booty Latina, I think it was. Before that, we're having a really big YouTuber whose name I can't remember, military dude. He will be there on Saturday. Ryan McBath is his name. He'll be out there on Saturday if you guys are interested in talking to him. He's an Army vet, programmer, triathlete, author, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, we'll be there having a good time. Discord.gg/politics. Prime, thank you for the invite.
Sure. Did you already have that conversation with that African American woman?
That was on. Oh shit! I forgot to remind you. God damn it.
Oh,
that was on Friday, last Friday.
Oh.
You left Prime out.
No,
I totally forgot. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, no worries, friend. I might have been even busy at that time because something last minute did come up. But still, hopefully I can catch something on the other thing. All right. Thank you all so much. We are going to continue on for Open Welcome panel right after this. Anyone here can join us. We'd love to have you. All right. But if not, that's okay. Thanks for your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion, my community. I know they appreciate just as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
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 All right.